The recent rise in violent crime has renewed calls for the city to bring back more psychiatric centers for people with severe mental illness.
All right, right now, what is actually being done when it comes to treatment? Morgan McKay here now with a closer look. Morgan.
Steve and Teresa, this is a heavy topic, and I want to preface it by saying that a vast majority of those struggling with mental illness are not violent, and you might not even know that they are dealing with mental health issues behind the scenes. But something this piece does focus on is what is the city and the state doing to help the small percentage of people who are struggling with severe mental illness and are not getting the help that they need. In the 1950s, public mental health care systems in New York and across the U.S. started to shift away from state-run mental institutions to community-based treatment.
They've been released from hospitals under a program called deinstitutionalization.
Instead, more money was poured into mental health centers, supportive housing, and outpatient treatment. But as psychiatric centers started to close, some of those unable to seek help on their own ended up on the streets or in prisons.
Public library systems, the transit systems, all kinds of systems find out that they're in the mental health care business.
More than 90% of those with severe mental illness can be stabilized and discharged within a few days or weeks.
They're going to go to a medical doctor, or they're going to try to get in line to see a psychiatrist or a therapist to kind of try to figure out what's going on, get a diagnosis.
But the number of hospital beds the state has for this group of people is rapidly shrinking, since psychiatric beds are reimbursed at a lower rate. According to the Treatment Advocacy Center, the state has only about half the number of beds needed to treat mental illness, and 600 psychiatric beds went offline during the pandemic to make room for COVID patients. These beds can help stabilize those in immediate need so they can later transition to community care.
Most people, if they have access to the acute care beds in these public hospitals, will get better and move on to the community.
There is also a very small percentage of people with severe mental illness who do not realize that they need treatment. It is estimated that 50% of those living with schizophrenia and 40% of those with a bipolar disorder do not recognize that they have an illness. The approach to how this group receives treatment is where researchers and advocates are split.
Any mental health care system that aspires to be functional, that aspires to connect people to the treatment that they need, is going to have to provide involuntary treatment.
We created a program right up in there in Westchester County that's led by peers and case managers, and they engaged 80% of a group of people that otherwise might have gotten a court order. So we know how to engage people.
Recent violent incidents in the city have some calling for more institutionalization, something advocates say they have heard before.
What goes through my head is, again, we're going to get back into sweep away their rights. Let's go back to the past. Let's put them all in hospitals, as if this whole community is dangerous and violent.
But something everyone can agree on, more psychiatric beds are needed to help stabilize those struggling with severe mental illness. To help with this, Governor Kathy Hochul is also proposing increasing the Medicaid rate for these beds, but it will still take time for the effects for this to be seen. Steve?
Very well. All right, thanks, Morgan.